Okay, how to use GitHub the user-friendly way with Visual Studio. So GitHub is an amazing version control tool, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you the basics of how to use it and how to get started really. So first you're going to want to find GitHub Desktop. I'll provide a link in the description, and you just want to click download for Windows. If you're on Mac, you can click the Mac button. Once that's downloaded, you'll get a little app on your little desktop here, and then you want to open it. Mine's going to be different because I'm already signed in and I didn't really want to uninstall it. But basically it will prompt you to sign in with your GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can just go to GitHub and create an account and then sign in with that GitHub account in the GitHub Desktop app. Once you open and finally sign in to GitHub, you'll have something that looks like this. But if you want the dark theme, which I highly recommend, you just want to go to Options, Appearance, and Dark Theme. So what is GitHub and what are some of these terms? Well, first off, you have things called repositories, you have branches, and then there's a ton of other things, but for now we're going to stick with repositories and branches. What are those two? So a repository is like a file. If I go to my GitHub and go to my repositories here, I've got a test repo that was from a recording that I tried earlier, and I've got my website and I've got a uni project. So it's where all my code goes. So if I click on my website, I can see my personal website here. I can see some of my content, some of my HTML code and all that kind of stuff for my website. But this is a private repository, so only I can see this. So it's like, think of it like OneDrive, basically. It's where all your files go. And what is a branch? Well, a branch is where most of your code will live. You'll have your master branch. Every project has a master branch. But as you can see, I have two other branches here. So think of a branch as you wanting to experiment with your code, with your project, but you don't want it to affect your main master branch because you don't know if it's going to work, and you don't want to have to add all these features to then just remove them if it doesn't work, or it can potentially damage some of your other parts of your code which you haven't thought about. You can use a branch. So it will vary from your master branch, so it will be identical to begin with, but then you'll have almost two projects you can work on, which are basically very identical. You'll have your master, which is your working stable build, and then you'll have your branch, where you can experiment and do whatever. The best way I think I can show you is to make an example. So if you want to make a repository, you want to click File, New Repository, and give it a name. So I'm just going to call this My Test Repo. And when naming things, GitHub doesn't really like spaces, so it will just fill in the spaces with hyphens. You can then give it a description like, this is a test repo to demo GitHub. It will then ask you for a path where you would like to store this. I'm not sure exactly what the default path is, but I've made my own path here. Initialize this repository with a README. You can do this if you want. Personally, I don't need a README, so I won't include that. You then have a Git Ignore. A Git Ignore is basically when you publish something to GitHub, it doesn't actually need all the files. A lot of the files are kind of junk files that just aren't needed. So for Visual Studio, there is a designated one just called Visual Studio, and we're going to be using this one because I'm going to be showing you how to use GitHub Desktop with Visual Studio. So we're going to have the Visual Studio Git Ignore, and for the license, you can add a license if you want. Mine's not going to have one, and we just click Create Repository. Awesome. So now I'm going to want to publish this repository to GitHub. It doesn't have anything in it yet, but I'm just going to want to publish it anyway. I'm going to keep my code private and just click Publish. Again, if you wanted to work with people, you would untick that private thing, and then you can have people also work together on your code, but I'm not going to be showing you how to do that today. So if I go back to my GitHub here, I can see under my repositories, if I refresh the page, there's my test repo. This is a test repo to demo GitHub. And if I click it, there will be two files, a Git attributes and a Git Ignore. The Git Ignore is obviously the personalized one that we just said for Visual Studio. We don't need to tweak anything with that, and that seems good enough for now. So we're just going to minimize this and go back to GitHub Desktop. So now I want to put my code here. So what I'm going to do is go to that repository where I made it, so we can see my test repo here, and I'm going to want to make a Visual Studio project here. So I'm just going to open up Visual Studio, make a new file, call it test for GitHub, and set its location to be in that repository that we just made. So GitHub, my test repo, and I'm just going to put it in the root folder. That's good enough. And there we have it. I'm just going to add a very basic quick file real quick. And there we have it. So I've made a very, very, very basic application here. And I save it. And if I go into GitHub Desktop, we'll see that several files have been added. You don't need to really worry about these other files. They're just made when you made the project. But we can see one here called source.cpp. That's the file with all my code in it. Look. The pluses just means code's been added. And if it's red and it's got a little minus, that means code's been removed. We can see the line number here as well for the code. And I can see basically changes that I've made to the project. So I like this code. It works, as we can demo. Oh, it's just going to close immediately because I forgot a piece of code. But that's fine, because I'm going to publish this. So created base class. You can add a description if you want. I normally do, but for this tutorial I'm not going to. I usually just use it as a little changelog. So I've committed that change, but it's not actually been pushed to GitHub yet. So what I'm going to want to do is up here it says push origin. I'm going to push that to GitHub. So while that's doing that, if I open up my GitHub and we wait for it to finish, there we are. If I refresh my GitHub now, we can see test for GitHub, and inside we've got my solution. And if I go again, we can see my source CPP, and that's got all my code in it. So obviously, as I stated earlier, the application closes immediately. So I've noticed there's a problem, and I also want to add some more to my code. So I'm going to cin.get to stop the program from closing immediately, and I want to add some more lines. So hello, my name is Joe. Like that. I'm going to capitalize this for spelling mistakes as well and all that kind of fun stuff. So I've added 2 lines of code and also a white space as well. So I open up Git here. We can see that hello world has been moved. Apparently. Oh yeah, so the capital H, it's there now. And I've also added another line. Okay, nice. So fixed app closing immediately. I can't spell, apologies. So then again, I'm going to push that to origin. If I go to my history here, I can see all my commits along with the description. So I created my base class, and then there it is. And then fix app closing immediately, like that. But for now, I'm just going to leave this on changes because I don't really need to look through my history. So let's make a branch. Let's experiment with this code, right? So I want to add something risky, yeah. But I don't want to mess up this code because this code works, it's nice, and I don't want to risk messing it up. So what I'm going to do is going to make a branch. So under my branches here, I can see that I'm currently in my master branch, but I'm going to want to make a new branch, and I'm going to call this test branch. And again, it's going to hyphen where there's spaces and create branch. I'm going to publish this branch with all the current code here, basically. So now I have 2 identical projects. The only difference between them, that one of them's called test branch, the other one's called master. Okay, so making sure that I'm in my test branch here, I'm going to want to add some more code. This is risky code. Just very simple. You can obviously make it more dangerous or whatever, but I'm just going to add another cout just for simplicity. And I can see here that I've added another line of code. And then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to added test feature. And I'm just going to publish that to my test branch. Making sure to publish it to origin again. So now what's going to happen is that I'm going to have 2 repositories. One repository, but they've got different pieces of code in. So under my test branch, this is what my test branch looks like. But if I want to swap back to my master branch, say the higher ups have told me to stop working on this new game mechanic and they want me to focus on the core game and fix the bugs, I'm going to switch back to master branch. And just like that, if I go into Visual Studio, it will prompt me to reload all my code. So I'm going to say yes to all. And all of a sudden, that risky code is gone. But it's not gone for good, because if I want it back, I can just go back to the test branch. It's going to ask me to refresh. I refresh, and there it is again. So I have these two projects now, a nice stable build and an experimental build where I can mess around with code and all that kind of stuff. So it can be useful thinking uni projects, right? You're coding a nice uni project, and it's getting close to the deadline. So you can have your nice working piece, but say you just want to see if you can program this one tiny little thing in just before the deadline. You can make a branch, program it, and if it doesn't work or you don't have enough time, you can just go back to your master branch and submit that. But what if you do have enough time? What if it works? How do you get that test branch to be part of your master branch so you don't have to keep working on this test branch? Well, very down at the bottom here, you can choose a branch to merge into master. And you can do this with other branches as well if it's more advanced. You can have test branches of test branches, for instance. But for now, we're going to keep it quite simple, and I'm just going to merge the test branch into my master branch. And what this is going to do is, as you can see, successfully merged test branch into master branch, is if I reload my code, it's just added that piece of code in. And if you've removed lines of code and all that kind of stuff, it will tell you what's changed and what hasn't changed and all that kind of stuff. And if there's conflicts, it will tell you how to fix them and all that fun stuff. And that's basically branches. You can use them for experimental features, really, is what I use them for mostly. And again, I can see my history here as well. So I can see this was part of my other branch. I did the test code and all that kind of stuff. And you're able to revert commits if you didn't like the commit and all that kind of stuff. So the reason why GitHub's so nice is because it's all saved to the cloud, basically. If I go and close down my app here, what I'm going to do is completely delete that repo. Boom, it's gone. It's not on my computer anymore. I'm going to open up my recycle bin here, empty it, boom, gone. Can't find the test repo. Oh no. What I can do is go File, Add Local Repository, I believe. Oh, no, sorry. File, Clone Repository. So this is now cloning from my actual GitHub account. So if I go back to my profile here under my repositories, it's going to get the code that I've published to GitHub. So clone a repository, my test repo, clone. And now it's downloading that from Git. So we're just going to clone again. Already exists and it's not an empty directory. Okay. Locate my test repo. There we have it. So now my GitHub's back. Yep, so there we have it. This is risky code. If I go back, look, my test repo, there's the solution file. So you saw me delete it, but I've now just downloaded it again from GitHub. So you can work on other computers, download the GitHub Desktop app, and just click File, Clone Repository, get whichever one you want, download it, and just carry on working. You don't have to keep plugging in USB sticks or zipping and uploading to OneDrive or whatnot. You can just do it from here. And that's basically GitHub in a nutshell. There's other things like pull requests and all that kind of stuff, but that's more or less for working with people. This is just a very basic tutorial on how to use GitHub for just making your life a bit easier. You can see all the kind of stuff. If you already have a project, however, and you want to add it to GitHub, say you've been working on a project and thought, oh, this is going well, I want to add it to GitHub. What you can do is just click the Add Local Repository, click Choose, find where you've got that repository, and then it will just add the repository, publish it to GitHub, and then it will just be in this list here as well. So I hope that helped. That's an introduction to GitHub. If you'd like me to if you want to learn more, on like pull requests and push requests and all that kind of stuff, I'll link videos down in the description from the coding train. He's really, really good at describing how GitHub works and all that kind of stuff. And I hope that helped. Thanks.